Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show. This is Scotland's #1 politics and chat from an anti-nationalist perspective. I am the host, Mark Devlin, and I'm here tonight, going out to you live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Here tonight with two co-hosts, Mark Zegfeld and David Griffiths. Now, how are you both tonight? How are you, Mark, first of all?
I'm good, thanks. A bit of computer problems, but apart from that, very good, thanks.
Right, well, yes, we all have computer problems from time to time. David, how are you doing?
All good. Tired after a long night listening to the US election coverage.
Right. Oh, well, yes. Well, and of course, we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. Now, what are we going to be talking about, David? What have you got for us tonight?
Tonight, not for the first time, admittedly, in recent weeks, I will be talking about yet another interesting opinion poll showing projections ahead of the 2026 Holyrood election.
Right, very good. And Mark, what have you got for us?
I'm going to be talking about the bottle scheme and the upcoming court case.
Okay, very good. And of course, we will all be talking about Trump's win in the US election, US presidential election.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
Yes. Now, okay, you may be wondering why Mary is not here tonight. She has a family emergency. So we will be back with all that stuff and much more in a moment. If I can find the thing. Just a second. Titles, where are you? All right. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics chat from an anti-nationalist perspective. I should actually read the script, it might help me here, even though I say this every week. Our aim is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that has been strangling Scotland's potential. I've got huge thanks, actually, to Grumpy Git, who is one of our regular followers, who's taking over chat duties tonight. So, as Mary would say, please keep your chat messages short and spicy, and Grumpy will endeavour to put them up as they come in, hopefully all the good ones. Anyway, right, doing a good job so far. Look at all those coming up. And thank you to everyone who has been saying hello. I want to say a big thank you to some people I met the other day at an event in Glasgow. And one lady, I think her name was Helen, she said she enjoyed watching the show. It was very nice to hear that. And also to others who hadn't watched the show yet, and if you're watching tonight, please, I hope you will enjoy it. Now, also, as we always say, a huge thanks to our friends at United Against Separation Facebook page, where many of you are watching from tonight.
And remember, sharing is caring. The #1 thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube. Even if you don't subscribe, hit a like. And if you can subscribe, please do so to increase the reach of the show at the click of just one button.
Perfect. Very good. Well done. You say that like a natural. You do there. And as I said, Mary's not here. So please do keep sending in his comments. Hi, Craig from sunny Saudi Arabia. Isn't it always sunny? I'm just wondering about that. Like saying I'm here in rainy Scotland. Anyway, right. Okay, let's talk about the Scottish man who won an election. Anyway, as the whole world knows by now, Donald Trump, who's half Scottish, has been elected the 47th president of the United States of America in a stunning comeback. He not only won the Electoral College, but the popular vote, it seems. Anyway, now, what was the latest? I've got this. Let's see what we've got here. Yes, that's 223 to Kamala, and I almost said that in a Trump accent, and 294 to Trump as it stands at the moment. Now, in a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about how that affects Scotland. But first, a bit about the wider thoughts. David, you get started.
Yep, sure. Well, I wasn't surprised at the outcome, I would say. Trump had been in the lead in polling and in betting sites for months prior to Biden stepping down, which I think was 11 weeks ago. Kamala had rallied since then. She'd come in and made a good impression initially and had closed the gap, taken the lead at times. But then latterly Trump had retained the lead, or regained the lead, I should say, and had retained it and stayed as favourite on bookie sites, betting sites throughout. The only thing I would say is the scale of the likely finishing numbers was, without question, unexpected. Nobody expected 90% of counties, and there are how many thousands of them there are, Trump to increase his vote in so many, such a large proportion of the counties, which meant, of course, that Kamala only increased her share of Biden's vote by about 10% or so. At one time, she hadn't even increased the vote in any single county. So really, that was quite unexpected.
I saw that, actually. The guy says, holy smokes.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone could believe it. And then the other interesting statistic was that some of the Republican vote share by demographic had increased significantly, far more so than expected, particularly Latino and Black voters, as they call them. You know, they can talk about this stuff in America quite unashamedly. I heard somebody saying, well, the Latino voters are mainly Catholic, they're mainly socially conservative. Can you imagine me talking about that in this country? I'd be called a bigot straight away. You know, it's ridiculous. But
well, so we do get a bit of that. You know, the Catholic vote. We talk about that. The Catholic vote that Alex Salmond took and went over to the Nationalists. You know,
indeed. But if you ever try and say, for example, if I talk about Scotland's Irish Republican demographic, people say, "What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?" You know, yeah, all right, mate, come on.
Well, there's a bit of that. You know, people do. I mean, some people definitely do vote in these tribal groups. So
yes,
you know, certainly. If I see a lot of that.
Indeed, there's an element of block voting, no doubt. But unexpectedly, also a higher than expected proportion of women voted for Trump. And I know a lot of people just could not believe what they were seeing. I don't know if you watched any of Channel 4's coverage. It was great to see Emily Maitlis furious. She was actually reduced to swearing at one time because of the unexpectedly high proportion of votes going from, as she called them, ethnic minorities. 1 in 3, you know, she could not believe it. So it's always nice to see Emily, who takes herself so seriously, getting angry when voters don't do what she thinks they should do. You know, it's lovely. I love that.
Mark, what do you think were the main factors? I mean, I don't know. First of all, were you following it quite closely?
Yeah, I watched it, and I was in the space with Elon Musk, who hosted, and he called it right at the start. He called it. He said they were going to win by a landslide. He said they were going to win the Senate. He said they were going to win the House, which they are. They've won the Senate. They've won the popular vote, and the House is too close to call. But it looks like they're probably going to win that. So they're going to win all 3 houses they're going to have. So he called it. He said they won the black vote, the Latino vote, they won the women's vote, and quite surprisingly, they won the youth vote as well. And the first-time voters, all voted for, well, mostly voted for Trump. So it was quite it was quite. I thought Trump was going to win, but I thought it was going to be really close.
Yes.
I thought it could go to
I didn't really. Well, first of all, it's very, very difficult to figure out who's going to win from here. It's hard enough if you're actually in the States. Now, regular viewers will know I lived in the States for 8 years. And during that time, and actually at the time when Trump won the first election, and it was quite amazing because you could talk to people on the ground and see how angry they were and see what was driving them, and then you'd look at the media and the polling would be like, Hillary Clinton's got a 95% chance of winning this, and you're just like, no, I don't know, that is not the case at all. Of course, America being a big country, you know, perhaps where I was, it was more Republican, perhaps, but nonetheless, I think you just get a feeling. I mean, similar to, you know, when we have elections here, of course, you know, you can get a feeling this media are not really telling us the right thing. But I think a few things that were quite interesting to me. I thought particularly Trump's campaign was very visual.
Yep.
And it came out, I read an article about this as well, and it basically said that there were 4 main images out of this election that voters could hang on to. One was Trump's mugshot, which was surprisingly used as a kind of rallying cry, you know, being a victim of this legal, what's the word, lawfare, I suppose is the word for that. Then there was, of course, the assassination, the fist pump, huge image as well. And then there was his recent one of the garbage truck as well. I can't remember what the other one was before, sorry. So, I mean, these when you look back in the campaign, you can see these big images. And these play well in people's minds because a picture tells 1,000 words, or maybe a picture gets 1,000 votes. Perhaps. Whereas if you're thinking, what kind of impression do you have of Kamala Harris? Then you're like, well, what? I just see her cackling all the time. As you know, that's kind of the impression I got anyway.
The biggest issue, Matt, at the election was immigration, and Trump went to the border on a number of occasions to campaign. And when they asked Harris about going to the border, and she never went, she said, "Well," and one of the questions to her was, "Have you ever been to the border?" And she went, "Well, no, but I've never been to the EU either." And that's how she answered it. And that summed up. And that was the biggest issue. And I think that's why she lost it.
Well, we have the same immigration issue, of course, in the UK, and it didn't stop Labour getting in. But of course, the Tories themselves were hapless and didn't do anything about it. So, I mean, really, it's very actually to get again, it's difficult to get a sense, perhaps, of how angry Americans are about ordinary Americans are about this, and particularly people like Latinos and all these groups we talk about. They see, and especially people who have legal immigrants, like what we were certainly trying to be legal immigrants, and on that pathway, they hate illegal immigrants because they know how hard it is to get in legally. So they hate it. So it's a real. It's you can't just go, oh, it's going to be good for the country when they think their jobs are going to be taken away by people, and there's certainly much more. It's less protections for workers in the US, so your job will get taken away by immigrants in that case. Right.
Yeah.
Moving on. Right, we've got. What I've got here. What drove it? How does it affect global political trends? We'll do that, and then we'll talk about the Scottish specific stuff.
Yeah.
David. I'm almost called you Derek again.
Derek, oh my goodness, no, it's me. It's DG. So, well, I mean, my thoughts would be the increase in Trump's vote was a reaction to the lengthy post-COVID economic downturn, albeit the US economy is now strong, as is the UK's economy starting to turn the corner a little. Obviously, the conflicts in Ukraine and in Gaza and Lebanon, of course, the sheer horror of 7 October attacks played a big part. There's no doubt about that. I think there was partly, Mark mentioned this before, a reaction to woke culture being part of it. Americans, it appears, feel rightly or wrongly, Trump is better equipped than either Biden or Kamala at ending wars. I think that is the feeling. And I think also the fact that Kamala was more or less shoehorned in 3 months ahead of the election and told pretty much you're going to have to do this without proper primaries, because Biden just was kept on too long. A blind man could see he was not remotely equipped to do the job any longer. He held on too long. It's ridiculous. But I mean, I have to say this because I've been speaking to people in America, and once again, US voters have shown, well, we're just not ready to elect a female president. Hillary, who was eminently capable of doing the job, she didn't get the nomination against Obama. They had a really vicious fight, and he won it. Then she lost out when she stood against Trump. Now Kamala, who's a woman of colour, let's not forget, with part American Indian ancestry, she's lost out, which means that the only person to beat Trump in an election was an old, doddery, Irish ancestry white man who was effectively a walking waxwork by the end of it. And his policies were identical to Kamala's because she was his vice president. So
she couldn't say that. She couldn't say at any point that she had a difference. In fact, when they asked her, she was like, she couldn't even answer the question.
Indeed. And that's interesting because you can't really say this is a rejection of Biden's policies. Possibly won't. Yeah, you could say that. Immigration to an extent, possibly also. But 81 million people voted for Biden standing on the very same policies that Kamala was standing on. And she's so far got 66 million. Now, there are 4 states still to declare. I'm not sure what the likely end total will be, but it won't be anything like 81 million, I can tell you that. So it doesn't really reflect all that well in America as a society, the fact that they keep turning down female candidates. I would say, however good they are, but I mean, nobody can tell
I don't think they could have had a worse candidate in her. I mean, really, I don't know. I just don't see how on earth she even could get the job. She could barely speak.
It's true. I mean,
and she just cackles and she does. I mean, some people were saying that she's drunk all the time. I mean, whether she's drunk or not, she looks as though she's drunk.
I know what you mean. Indeed, yeah.
It's just like, I mean, you can't. You go. She's. Some people saying, well, that he's bad isn't a good reason to vote for her.
That's
true.
But
it's.
I think she was put in as the, if you like, the the DEI candidate way back in 2020 as his running mate, and the thinking being she would be groomed to take over. She didn't expect to take over this early, but
they're trying to spin that as like, she didn't have enough time. She was trying to make the plane while it was on the way down. Okay, Elon Musk. Let's say if it was Elon Musk, because Trump to decide, and it was Elon Musk. Just say he can't actually run. I mean, he'd have been able to do it. It's not that complicated. I mean, you've got a whole team behind you. The candidate themselves, very, very poor. And Trump certainly won the media war. He won the whole thing of like that thing. Even just watching that thing when he does the talk after the garbage truck thing, when he explains how he did it and what his aides are saying and all this. It's a masterclass, and it's hilarious, but it's also a masterclass in how to appeal to people, just ordinary people. And
I think part of that is he's got a far better campaign team. And it's interesting because the spend, I don't know if you know this, but the comparative spend figures of the totals of the two campaigns, her campaign cost 3 times as much as his, apparently. She's going to get her money's worth, for sure. But, the funny thing is, it's not funny, but a lot of people are genuinely not just concerned, but alarmed in America. There are a lot of people who, it's a very divisive figure. An awful lot of people really do not like Trump and are fearful about what's going to happen. One particular viewer of ours, Claire, out in Arizona, I know you're feeling bad at the moment, having a bad time, but chin up, you'll be fine. Anyway, so
right.
That's my view on how it happened, I would say.
Yes. Okay, let's see. So I guess what we're looking forward to in global terms now are certainly net zero and these diversity things are going to be off the agenda. The Paris climate control nonsense, we'll probably withdraw from that again. What was I going to say there? Then on the global stage, we don't really know what's going to happen in Ukraine. He's tried to say he will try and solve that quickly. But really what it means is Europe's supposed to pay its way. That's really what it actually means. Will Europe pay its way? If Europe doesn't pay its way, then Russia will make the gain. Who's to lose most from this? Europe, of course. Right. And then, of course, it does mean that Israel will not get half-hearted support that it's been getting so far, mealy-mouthed support anyway from the Biden administration. And, of course, it means, and this is the most important thing, I think, Elon Musk will be free to cut to the Office of Government Cutting, or whatever it's going to be called. Yeah. So there's going to be it's interesting that they've rejected those things. So that much of this left-wing orthodoxy, and they're kind of free to go and see, will this work? Now, this is the big question: will this work? Will cutting the government work? Will it unleash American enterprise? Now, if you look at the growth, even with all this, with the difference in growth between Europe and the United States over the past 20 years, it's like this. America is so much more productive, and a lot of that is to do with they're not less constricted on energy use, first of all. But whether when cutting the government, whether that will make a big difference, that will remain to be seen. Sure. Right, now we'll take a wee quick few seconds, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how it all affects Scotland, so as much as it does. Right. Well, Joe's comment there is about how it affects UK. Now, of course, that's going to be an issue already. Some fractious relations between the Labour Party and the Trump to begin with. If you look at those historic tweets from David Lammy, and you're like, okay, that's not really the right thing, but they're historic tweets. So what matters now is how things go on now. Specifically about reaction to Trump's win in Scotland. Now, David, you know more about this than I do. How was this? What's about this historical beef that goes on between SNP and Trump, our famous Scotsman?
Indeed, it's absolutely true, and it all started out so wonderfully well. Would you believe Alex Salmond saw the benefit of courting an extraordinarily rich businessman of Scottish heritage and helped him with his initial plans he's, I don't know if you know this, he's got an Aberdeenshire golf resort. He had a lot of trouble with planning permission for it, and Salmond smoothed that all out and made it happen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and this is when, at the time, because Trump's initial foray into Scottish business was buying Turnberry, which he still owns, of course, which is where Janie Godley made a fool of herself on that
yes.
Yeah, when he was flying in. Anyway, so Salmond, it was all sweetness and light to begin with. Then they fell out, and Salmond called Trump a 3-time loser, causing damage to Scotland. And this was at the time, I think, whenever Salmond lost his or stood down as First Minister, Trump had a jibe back at him. So it all fell sour right then. When she became First Minister, Sturgeon immediately stripped Trump of his status as a business ambassador for Scotland.
Oh, really?
What a great idea that was, Nicola. Well done. A guy who's got more money than God, isn't he, the President of America? I mean, her initial communication with him was to say, right, we don't want anything to do with you. Brilliant. I mean, how that's Nicola Sturgeon for you. Anyway, then when Trump was ousted as president 4 years ago, she stood up in Holyrood and said, I'm not sorry to see him go, cheerio, and all this. And she said, don't haste you back. I'm real childish. So anyway, Hamza, of course, then became involved as he always did. All he ever did was carry on Sturgeon's policies. So when he became First Minister, he suggested that the Home Office should actually deny Donald Trump entry to the UK, citing his participation in riots in Washington after the 2020 election. Not that he was involved, but he is felt to have inspired them. And of course, moving forward, we saw several SNP figures endorsing Kamala just this week. So
yes, well, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Mark, well, how do you feel? There was an article. Did you see that article that said that Scots were the most likely to support Trump in the whole of Europe? Did you see that?
Yeah, and well, I just find all this quite embarrassing. We voted to stay in the UK. Foreign policy is UK's policy. So I just wish the Scottish government would stop acting. It shouldn't be called a government, and stop acting like a government, a separate government to the UK, making these statements that they're as if they are a government. It's getting quite embarrassing as well. The efforts they go to try and act as if they are an international country. It's kind of quite sad. And the comments to Trump, it doesn't help. It doesn't help because Trump actually said during a campaign when Salmond said, it's not Salmond, sorry, Swinney said that he's endorsing, and the Scottish government are endorsing Harris.
Yep.
Turned around and said, do you realise how much money I put into Scotland?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And how much investment I've got in Scotland? These people are just, it's playground politics. That's a word. That's a good, the good phrase for it. It's playground politics, where if they want to act and play with the big boys, then they've got to start.
Well, the thing is, I think that's the point, though, is that they aren't actually the big boys. And they're not in the same playground even. They're in the remedial class at the back, kind of. That's really what's going on. And they're trying to pipe up and say, hey, we are something, and try to make some capital out of that with their followers, perhaps, or to try, as you say, Mark, to try and say that Scotland has a voice. We've got a voice for you. But that's not what they were elected for. There's no foreign policy remit there. They want, as we always say, empty the bins. This is what we want. Every time you spend in front of a camera, Mr. Swinney or Mr. Yousaf, talking about Gaza or talking about Trump, is time that you're not talking about the bins, emptying the bins and the issues that we actually affect us here. Now, some of these Trump issues do affect us, and as you say, Mark, we have this the thing where they're snootily looking down at a person who invests millions into Scotland and who is continuing to invest despite the political pressure. And it just seems like, the politics, as you say, politics of the playground. Now, okay, so we've got John Swinney here. Is John Swinney here? I think.
I congratulate Donald Trump on his election as President of the United States. Scotland and the US enjoy many strong social, economic and cultural links that have been in place for many years. And we'll take forward our contact with the United States based on our shared values of respect for freedom and democracy, which are the underpin both of our societies.
But you made it clear that he wasn't your choice.
You have to answer questions that are put to you about what your views are, and I've set out my view about the election, but today I recognise democracy has taken its course, and I congratulate President Trump on his election.
Oh, so now you're up for democracy. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, we'll have to say that. Well, anyway, yes, but a few days ago he had said people in the United States of America should vote for Kamala Harris. And I've come to that conclusion only because Donald Trump is opposed to Scottish independence. This idea that, he says, when I'm asked, I had to answer. You're like, no, you actually don't. You could be like Russell Finlay did with the Tory leadership campaign. Just say, no, I'm not going to answer that. How difficult was that? They always want to answer stuff. You don't need to answer.
It's quite easy what he could say. He could just, and I'm not a politician, so but even I know it's quite easy he could turn around and say, well, I have issues that I need to sort out in Scotland, so exactly. That's what I'm concentrating on. I'm not concentrating on the American election because it's not our election.
Right.
If he just says that, nobody's offended, and they get on with it.
Or you can just say, well, as it affects Scotland, I will work with whoever is the choice of the American people. Certainly. Now, apparently, it's not official, hasn't been official Scottish government position to get involved. But Nicola Sturgeon backed Hillary over Trump in 2016. That didn't work. And Stephen Flynn also backed Harris this time here. But I'm going to go back to this message of congratulations. It says, Scotland and USA share many social, cultural and economic links. No mention, of course, Scott, that Trump is half Scottish. And how smug is this part where he said, in that relationship, we will stand fast in our support of values of fairness, democracy and equality, ideas that America was built on. It's like, okay, so you're a paragon of fairness, democracy and equality, Mr. Swinney. I don't think so. Mark, do you think, what's this smug nonsense?
Arrogant and very smug. He's against all three of those. Fairness, where's the fairness what he's been doing with politics? Where's the democracy? They've destroyed democracy in Scotland, and they haven't respected the biggest democratic vote we've had in our lifetime. They didn't respect that. So where's the democracy there? So it's quite, but it's just hypocrisy as well, which is a word I use often with these people.
Yeah, it's quite shocking. Now, okay, we've had a few ridiculous pieces through this through this election. Most notably, I think, perhaps Alex Cole-Hamilton of the Lib Dems, who went over there to campaign, and it didn't seem to go very well for him because he lost. But he even changed his what did he do? He changed his Twitter profile to say, what was it, Alex Hamala? No, Alex Cole-Hamala as well. And described as being cringy in this article here. So it's like, I don't know about this a little bit. I suppose it's anyone's right, I suppose, to go over and do that. He's not agitating for the breakup of the USA. Perhaps, and he says his sister's there, so it's maybe not that bad. But I don't know if it's really such a good look to get too involved in, especially when you're an MSP, David.
Well, you're quite right. I mean, you should have a little bit of dignity, a bit of decorum. I mean, Mark, he said it right. You don't have to answer every question yes or no, do you? I mean, it's the last thing they do in Holyrood for a start.
Yeah, exactly.
When it suits them and they want to give an opinion, they will give it, because it was a serious word. It's true, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's very true.
The last time Trump stood, I remember Kes Dugdale being interviewed. I've mentioned this on here before. He was interviewed by somebody, and she was asked, "Okay, if Trump wins, will you talk to him or ding him?" She said, "No, I'll definitely ding him, even if he's elected." Why? And she said she called him some ridiculous thing, but he's just total gash. He says he talks gash. You know what that means, honey? Seriously, that's what it's like. And they just can't wait to say, "Oh, I'm going to show my virtue by making sure everybody knows I don't like Donald Trump because he's this, that, the next thing." just keep quiet. Nobody's asking you, really. And if they do ask you, just say, well, it's very interesting. I'm sure the people of America will make the right choice. I could come up with 10.
I mean that's it. It's they're so think that you think well, actually Trump did respond to Swinney, right?
Yeah,
Actually, yeah, you might say, well, you think they would take notice of it, but I mean, I think partially because Trump knows what's going on here as well. Anyway, I mean, I think I said in the previous show, you should say, as a condition of coming back to the UK or state visit, that they should abolish Holyrood, some such thing, and see how we get on. We should maybe get him on the abolish Holyrood campaign. That would be quite amusing. At least it would be amusing. He was abolish. That's what you should be doing. Anyway, okay, now. Of course, we can't go out without talking about Brian Cox, our favourite ethno-nationalist, Celt Supreme. Indeed, he was on Channel 4, what could be his natural habitat, and saying that Trump is a monster. Now, as a long clip, so I'm just going to play the beginning of it. Here we go. Are you going to play it?
We have to make sure that he doesn't get in, because he's a monster. He really is. He's crazy. He's insane. He wants to be a dictator. I mean, it's all been so clear what he's been talking about. I don't know why the American people aren't listening to him. Well, some of the American people clearly are listening to him, but a lot of them aren't. The kind of nonsense that he's been talking over the last... I mean, I think he's lost it, quite frankly. I think he's deeply mentally unstable. And I think he has been for some time. This is not a man who should be the president of the United States. Absolutely not. He's unreliable. He's a convicted felon. I'm horrified. For instance, I'm a lapsed Catholic.
Yes, he's going to go on. Oh, actually, he's going to go on about being a lapsed Catholic, and he said that he was a big sinner there. Now, I was wondering why he was wearing this Groucho Marx disguise on there. Maybe he doesn't actually want to be show his true face.
Well, I'm no wonder. If I anybody close to Donald Trump, if they see that, they should send it to him, and he should open up an FBI investigation into Cox and get the IRS to audit him, because he has got no right whatever as an incomer in America to say all that stuff about the president. Whether you like him or not, you can't call the president crazy, insane, a monster who wants to be a dictator. In that case, you won't want to stay in our country then, will you, Mr. Incomer?
Yeah, it is a bit of a weird one. But then you do have the First Amendment. So,
true, indeed,
and it's particularly applicable to political speech. So, Cox does have the right in America, maybe not even as just a visitor, just being in America.
Sure, I'm not sure
to describe him in any way, but to say that he is insane, mentally challenged, all this type of thing. It's like a laundry list of stuff, really, Mark.
Well, to say that he's a dictator when he's just won a landslide. A big landslide is quite ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to say, because the American people have voted. They've put him into as the president. So how can he's not a dictator? If he was a dictator, then he would have took America by storm.
Well, perhaps why didn't he do that in the first 4 years? But maybe he's just been planning, waiting for his ideal moment, waiting for that chance he could get elected again. Anyway, okay, right. I think unless you guys have got something else to say about it, I think we will move on from this section. Anyway, yes, it does mean that, Alan. It does mean you will get sent to jail, or you commit a hate crime, as what they're trying to do in Scotland. Anyway, right, okay, let's move on to the next part. We'll see you in a few seconds. A huge thanks to Grumpy for dealing with the chat today. The messages are flying past. Mary may be out of a job if this continues, but she's got her own issues to deal with tonight, sadly. And hope that we will see her again. Well, we will see her again next week. Anyway, now, the majority, it survives entirely on donations from people like yourselves who are watching. this now last week. I think it was Brian, was it? He was very good at putting in the super thanks and super stickers, which you can do in YouTube. Otherwise, if you'd like to leave a deposit, not deposit. If you'd like to leave a donation, please do so. Go to our website and you can click the button there. I just found out the button hadn't been working for a few months. So if you've ever gone and tried the button and it didn't work, it didn't take you to the donation page, now is the time to go and try it and please make a donation. It's very annoying. Technology, so many things to look after these days. Anyway, we're trying to power up towards the Holyrood 2026 election. We'll see when that comes round, if it comes around any earlier. All donations, of course, big or small, are appreciated. And thank you all for your support, and thank you all for watching us every Wednesday. Now, there was another election this week in the UK for the Conservative leader of the Conservative Party. And that was won by Kemi Badenoch, another Scottish name who have, it would be better if Trump had kept his MacLeod, which was his mother's name. Then we'd have MacLeod, Harris, and Badenoch, and it would be all, it's all the Scots
Exactly.
together. Anyway, anyways, she beat Robert Jenrick. And to be honest, I haven't been following that much, but I guess David or Mark have been doing that a lot more. So I'll let them talk about it, starting with Mark.
Yeah, I'm not too keen on her at the moment, but I'm going to give her a chance. She was quite good at PMs this Thursday. What was it? Thursday, Wednesday? Yes, she did quite well. I thought a question on Trump and about Lammy to Starmer was really quite interesting. She said about his past tweets, and she read some of them out.
Oh, really?
And said, and said, would you apologise to Trump? Are you going to apologise to Trump for these remarks by your foreign secretary? And then she said, but will you not read your pre-prepared answer to the question, just answer it honestly and openly, and just say what you're thinking at this moment.
That's good.
Stan was a bit stunned by that, and I thought it was not a bad start. Not a bad start.
Okay.
But,
well, I haven't been paying much attention to it, as I said, and I don't even know really what did David. You probably know this better than I do. The main differences between her and Robert Jenrick. What were those?
Jenny was almost more right-wing than she is, I would say. And he was trying to be a little bit populist, I'd say, in his approach. A little bit more tough, a little bit more traditionally Tory, possibly. But in all honesty, right from the start of the campaign, she was an overwhelming favourite and became more and more so as it went on. And I think the final figures were not what I expected. I think it was 51,000 to 43,000. He won something like 45% of the vote share, and she was an 8-1 on favourite.
Right,
that's quite a thing. But as somebody pointed out on my Twitter, it's not about the gap; it's the probability. You can have it can be certain that a big team will beat another small team, and if they win 1-0, that doesn't indicate anything about the probability other than they were going to win. It doesn't matter the manner or the size of the defeat. So yeah, I think she was. She was more popular. I think she was the more, if you like, progressive choice. She was slightly better known. I was tipped 18 months ago, almost to the day, by a commentator, a very famous anti-woke journalist and author, Julie Burchill, who said to me, Kemi Badenoch, or Badenoch, she calls herself, I watched her at the shrine of Kemi Badenoch. She's the one shining light in UK politics, certainly the Conservative Party. I thought, wow, and I barely heard of her. I knew nothing about her at the time.
Okay.
Ever since, and so she was right. Fair play to her. She ran a decent enough campaign. She was always going to win it. So yeah, Jenrick was.
So the question really is, though, right? As was pointed out, I think by Stephen in the comments there, was this Tory party has a bunch of wets in it and a bunch of people who really should be perhaps in the Lib Dems, and then that's on one side, and then hammered, let's just say, in the short term anyway. That's the one. I thank you, Grumpy. And they're getting hammered on the other side by reform.
Yes,
I've said I don't think reform's got much staying power, but it might have enough staying power to cause a lot of trouble anyway, over the next few years, and especially perhaps maybe it could actually get some more because there's a whole Trump Farage reform boost perhaps from that. The Americans get rid of all this stuff. That should be Farage's thing. The Americans get rid of this. We can do this if you go with reform. How can she possibly counter that, Mark?
Well, funny enough, the polls that have come out have showed that the Conservatives have actually overtaken Labour. In the polls. So it just shows you how quickly it can turn. So I'm not. I think over the next 5 years, towards the next election, I do think this reform thing will get sorted. I think there will be some kind of merger or some kind of something will take place, because I think both parties know that if it carries on like this, they split the vote. It will allow another Labour government in. So I do think something will sort out within the next.
Well, I don't know, because I think quite a lot of the reform people are like, we hate the Tories for what they've done. She's going to have to do quite a lot of work to bring them back. Now, I was talking to some Conservative members at the weekend. They seemed very happy with Kemi. She said that the feeling that it can unite the party and bring the people together, perhaps. But I wonder about, I'm always like, I'm a real believer in getting the core. You need to get core people who can then, core group of people together, bolster the core, then evangelize from there. And maybe if she continues to do well in PMQs, then it could happen, perhaps.
Could happen.
An
interesting thing that John Curtis said on the back of the poll that Mark was talking about there. He was talking about, particularly in Scotland, and this is the poll I'll talk about in a minute also. And he said for the Conservatives to go further right to try to counter reform will serve no purpose other than pushing more people towards reform. That's what he felt.
I think that's reasonable.
Yep, indeed. So, I mean, that's. Curtis is a pro, and he knows exactly.
So I think you maybe want to. We talk about this a little bit. I have to think about that actually. Because the reform already exists,
of course,
right? Yep. So you don't want to push people towards it. You want to gradually slice people away, onion slicing, and say bring them back. And just say, look, this is we can actually. You can say the Tories can say, well, we can actually win this. We need to win it. That's the point. And okay, you might not get 90% of your policy, you might not get 100% of what you want, but if you can give you 90% of that, that type of argument. Mark,
I think the best parties we have and the best governments we have are when they are centre left or centre right. And I think both parties have gone well. The Conservatives, you can actually say the Conservatives have gone more left than what Labour are, but they've kind of lost their way a little bit. I think both need to come back to the centre, and then one centre left and one centre right.
Well, often they say that you need to campaign from the harder side. Not necessarily hard right or hard left, but you have to be more when you're doing your campaigning, you're building your group. You need to do that. But perhaps if you can reassert the centre right, then and assure voters that they will actually address these issues. This is what it's going to come down to. People are going to be looking at this American election and saying, well, okay, maybe these things aren't. Sacred cows. These sacred cows can be killed and eaten, put into a burger and served in McDonald's by Donald Trump. To expand on a metaphor. Now, she appointed Andrew Bowie as her Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland. He was the only one who actually supported her in Scotland. So, what do you think about that appointment, David?
I think he's fairly high profile. He's quite charismatic as well. I quite like Bowie. He did well to hold on to his seat. So yeah, I mean, he's certainly not he's not just a stool pigeon or anything. He's okay. I can't remember if we've mentioned this, but did we talk about immigration with Kemi? Because last weekend she was asked, she was asked about this SNP idea of a separate immigration system.
Oh, yes.
And she said, absolutely not. It's not going to happen. It's far better off left in the hands of the UK because it's a reserved issue. How can you possibly have immigration separately in Scotland? Because guess what? If you don't have a border, they'll just go to England. So
well, they were going to say something about the tax code, but
that's it. They were going to put them in the tax code. Do you think these people seriously? Everybody who comes into this country is given a tax code and only works in one place? Not a chance.
And only paid through the proper channels. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's a good stand. I mean, at least she doesn't have to stand up to constant heckling by Nicola Sturgeon.
True.
And to a lesser extent, Humza Yousaf. You know what? The pot's going off the boil.
Yeah,
somewhat,
yeah.
Which is certainly very helpful. We just have to make sure that it doesn't go back on to the boil here. Both it seems so little between Labour and Conservative, most like consumptivism and vision of yeah. Well, I mean, any party has to stand for something. I think that's a feeling that we've had, that there's not a big drive behind these. We've not got a big vision. Certainly, Labour under Keir Starmer doesn't give anyone the vision feeling. Particularly, and the Conservatives, of course, lacking in vision. And not even just lacking in vision, lacking in any ability to take any actions. They were in power for how long? And they in the past 8 years, at least, they didn't have they didn't hardly achieved anything. No. Terrible. True. Anyway, okay, we're going to be back in a second. We're going to talk with David's going to talk a little bit about latest poll projections, which is his forte. So we'll see you in a second. I forgot to mention, of course, that you can buy an Majority t-shirt. Oh, look at this. So beautiful. From the Majority shop while you're in the Majority. When you're making a donation, you don't have to make a donation. You can go to the shop. T-shirts, mouse mats, all kinds of stuff. Abolish Holyrood mugs. Seller. That's great. And a little bit of the proceeds from any sale goes towards the Majority organisation, such as it is, and this show. David, give us a little insight into the latest polling.
Indeed. So I've discussed this several times since July, as we all know, because there's a big concern among most of us about what might happen next. Now, just as a quick reminder, I know you all know this, in July, which is 4 months ago now, Labour took dozens of seats in Scotland and hundreds of thousands of votes from the SNP in the general election, and the fear after Labour's, shall we say, questionable faltering start to their time in office was that many of those voters would go straight back in 18 months' time. And it is 18 months, I think, 18 months tomorrow. 18 months tomorrow is the election, yes.
Is it in January?
No. 18 months, so it's like in May.
Oh, it's in May? It's only 18 months till 2026. Oh, I suppose it is. Okay.
It is. May 2026, it is indeed. Right. 1.5 years, indeed. So they're 3.5 years in. Anyway, so that was the fear. Now, last week, as we know, Rachel Reeves came up with her budget with her awful voice and horrible delivery, but she delivered the budget, and she has, it's felt, stolen the SNP's thunder a little in that even Leslie Reddick, my bête noire, if you like, she acknowledged that it had stolen some of the SNP's thunder in terms of ending accusations that Labour is just continuing Tory austerity, because they're talking about borrowing and stuff.
Oh, yes, so that was the main thing of it, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. So where does that leave us? Now, there was a poll at the weekend which may not have taken cognizance too much of the budget and what it meant and what it indicated, but bear with me because it's quite complicated here. You have two different figures in the Holyrood 2026 election. You've got, of course, the constituency vote and you've got the list vote. So overall, certainly in constituencies, the SNP is now standing at 33% on constituencies. Now, as an overall total, leaving aside what that would give them in the list.
I just have to say, how is that even possible?
Exactly.
So, come on.
And that would give them 51 seats overall, including the projection of what they'd win in the list, which is, of course, a direct correlation of how many they win in the constituencies. Labour are down to 22%. which would give them 29 seats, including the gains they make in the constituencies and what they hold on to in the list. Conservatives would rise slightly from their general election, 12.7% up to 15, although it's way down from their 25 as it was in 2021, which would give them approximately 22 seats. And then comes the really interesting stuff. Well, let's just say Lib Dems, first off, 10%. That would probably give them 6 seats, probably, just as they won in the general election. But the really interesting, the imponderables are Reform, who are on 11%, and the Greens on 9%. Now, remember, 8% was enough to give the Greens 8 seats. It's not linear, but 9% would give them 8 or 9. And with Reform, 11%. That might give them 12 seats. It's possible, okay? But it's difficult to know exactly, because the big unknown is how many they will win constituencies, and that gives a direct impact on how many they win in on the list. Now, with those figures, 51 seats, that would certainly allow the SNP to form a minority administration, because nobody else, really, you're not going to get the Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem and Reform all into an alliance. That's not going to happen. So the big question becomes, okay, let's say Swinney stays on and forms a minority administration. Would he get any of those parties to go in with him? Probably the Greens would. He probably, because he's so, yeah, they probably would. But the rest of them, I can't see it really. But there is more about this in my Zoomer section, because the big question becomes, would any of the larger parties go in with them to form an administration? Hold that thought, because I'll come back to that. But what this makes clear, guys, is Effie Dean said today, I don't know what to write about with the SNP. Haven't gone away. They haven't gone away, Effie. I'm sorry, they really haven't. So, and this is why I have no alternative here. I've got to continue with this mantra of mine, which is you find the party and the candidate who is best placed to beat the SNP in every constituency and encourage people to vote for him. I know a lot of people will be typing this now. I can't see it, but I know a lot of people saying, "But I can't vote Labour." Guys, just hold that thought also. Let's see how it goes nearer the time and see how you feel.
Well, it's not a matter of voting Labour for Labour policies. If you're not a natural Labour voter, it's not about that. It's about beating the SNP and giving them the final death blow. This is the chance that they can come back. They've used the Scottish Parliament as a springboard for every single action of the past, 20 years, basically. And that got to the point of, even forcing a referendum. Now, perhaps the UK government is more resilient to all that. It's true. But it's still, we don't really need to have this toxic nationalism in Scotland and holding us back. Now, I mentioned last week, I think that the SNP are in a bit of a bind, because if they continue, if they do the same things as Labour, then people will just say, well, what's the point?
Exactly.
The SNP. And if they oppose them, then people will say, well, why are you opposing Labour? Right? Yeah. And because you can't get anywhere, you can't get independence, just oppose them for the hell of it. Yeah. So Swinney's in a bit of a bind. And there is, as we said, there are some talks about how that might be how that might go over if one party doesn't get a majority. But it's a long way to go.
Indeed.
And Labour should certainly mature, such as in government, to some extent. It's surprising that they had such a rocky start.
Yes, they lacked sure-footedness with their start. Let's be honest. They really did. One point I just have to finish up. I won't take long here, but
sure.
As a postscript, do you guys know the closing date for nominations for people to stand for the SNP in Holyrood in 18 months' time? Do you know what the closing date is? Monday.
Well, I better get my application in then.
Exactly. So go on, guys. I want to see all of it.
Indeed.
So, but
yes.
Very, very interesting to see who's going to apply and who isn't. And I'm talking here about Matheson, Sturgeon, Humza. Are they going to have a go again?
We're going to have all that information.
Exactly. I don't know whether it's going to be made public, but 11th of November is the closing date, and then they'll be chosen by April. So they're taking this seriously. They're getting their ducks in a row well in advance, and we have to also. So yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, we have to continue. That's the thing, Nobody said it was going to be easy.
Indeed.
Anyway, of course, James. Scotland is socially conservative. Even most of the traditional Labour voters are socially conservative as well. But the issue is that there is still a lot of tribalism in Scotland, and there's a lot of nationalism has got in the way of allowing Scotland to thrive. We can see, I think it'll become, certainly as we get closer to events, the election, then we'll begin to see more what we're dealing with. But Labour's still got a long way to go, and SNP still have a long way to fall. In any case, right, up next, Mark's going to be talking about Scottish Government wasting money. which we all know about, but this is new drama and new details. So we'll be back with that in just a second. Right, Mark, might as well just go on with it.
Yeah, well, on Tuesday, the Scottish Government will be going to court with about the bottle scheme.
Oh.
Now, Biffa are taking, the waste management company are taking them to court for £200 million.
Is that all?
That's all. Yes, it's 45 million.
Thank you, Doug.
The 45 million pounds for... No, sorry, it's 55 million pounds for what they've lost so far, and 145 million pounds for future earnings that they would have had, because they had a 10-year contract with the Scottish Government to do this.
Insane, absolutely insane.
It's quite interesting because this is the first of what could be many of these
more
cases.
Okay.
Because if they win, and they win their 200 million, you're going to see Coca-Cola, you're going to see the supermarkets, you're going to see a whole host. So this 200 million bill that we could face already could end up being multi-millions, probably billions of pounds by the end of it. So this could be absolutely huge. Now, Biffa are taking this extremely serious because they've got Roddy Dunlop as their on this, and the Scottish Government have got Jerry Moynihan as their representative on this. And we know the Scottish Government have not been very good in court recently, have they? They've not won many court cases.
Well, so big fees, and if you win that type of thing.
Yeah, and
nice.
It's it just shows you because Lorna Slater obviously was put in charge of this, and she blamed the UK government for stopping this because of the internal market and the glass that had to be taken out. But a review by the Scottish government in August, I think it was, March. Sorry, in March, they came up with that there was issues with this scheme months and months and months before the UK government got involved.
Right.
So even the Scottish government are saying that it wasn't so much the UK government that stopped this; it was just issues all the way through it.
Right.
So this is I think this could see when like with David saying about the polls and the lead that the SNP got. When things like this come out into the public domain, and it's 200, if Biffa win this case, and that's 200 million, and then the supermarkets will definitely go in, will definitely do theirs because it's cost them quite millions. And then you've got Coca-Cola, who, the size of them, they come in and do theirs. This could end up costing quite a lot of money to the Scottish government, and it's not the UK government that are being sued; it's the Scottish government and the Scottish ministers that.
Well, they're always talking about this, the black hole. I mean, this is another, this is a potential black hole on the horizon, and basically, we're Scottish government doesn't have enough cash as it is, and then they're going to take £1 billion out of it probably. In the end.
One of the main questions being put to them is why did they sign deals with all these companies without getting the UK government's say so in the first place?
Yes,
because it was always going to go down to the UK to say yes, that doesn't involve the internal market. Yes, you're not interfering with that. Go ahead with the scheme. It was always going to be.
The question is going to be about who gave the assurances, right? Because obviously, if I'm reading here, they're saying the Scottish government saying, well, they were taking a commercial risk, but that's not actually commercial risk if they're taking it based on an assurance that the government says that this law is going to pass or this initiative is going to pass, and the government has done all the work. Because surely that's one of the things those companies' lawyers would have asked: is this is because they'd have to do all their due diligence before they sign the big contract, right? Surely they said, well, is this good, legit, as it were, just to cut a long conversation down. And I'm pretty certain she said, or at least her team said, yes. So
Yeah.
Well, it's already cost the government and the taxpayer £8 million when Circulation Scotland went out of business. That was a loan that they've never got. They've not got back. So it's just so much waste and so much. Just imagine if it costs £1 billion. What could that do for education or health service or the local councils? Covering the local councils, it would have paid the winter fuel allowance, easily paid the winter fuel allowance. It's just cost money.
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to personalise this Lorna's billion, that type of thing, and then get people to know that this is what happens when you invite, when you use nationalism to bolster your nationalist credentials. You invite a bunch of extremists into your government, right? And John Swinney would do the same again. If he felt it suited push the path of independence further along, he would do the exact same thing again. And who suffers? Scottish public suffer because we're losing all this money, and you have to go through all this nonsense and all this debate about it and stuff. I said at the time, when these big companies come in and they see people like Lorna Slater, they just go like, this is easy money, because even if we screw up, we can just, we'll just blame it on them, and then we'll come after them with our lawyers, and we'll eat them alive. And that's what happens. That's going to happen. It's a win-win for them. Anyway, and exactly. Oh, imagine these clowns are actually in charge of an independent Scotland and the money they would have wasted. Well, you wouldn't see it. That's the thing. This is the thing that gets me. You've got people, we Jimmy from the scheme. He's going, things will be so much better after independence. Jimmy, you're not going to get that money.
No,
you're not going to get it. Who's going to get it? Lorna Slater and her mates. That's who's going to get it. No, you. Wake up. Anyway. Right, well, we'll just to see how it goes on there. Canadian fruitcake. That actually sounds quite tasty.
Unlike Lorna, yes, indeed.
But anyway, great segment there, Mark. You got me a bit riled up. Indeed. Woken up. Wake up, Scotland. As we should call this, perhaps. Anyway, right, things you can do now to support the show. You can buy a T-shirt or a mug. Look at that. Amazing. And we are the majority of Scots who reject Scottish nationalism. It's just become a minority hobby. We hope it doesn't come back to be a profession for more people. Anyway, you can subscribe to our show on YouTube, and we love that. But if you can't subscribe, please do give us a like, because that helps us go up in the ranking. You can tell your friends about us, and you can also do all of the above, which makes us extremely happy and fulfilled, underlined exclamation mark. And that's the bit where Mary usually says, yay. Okay, coming up, it's the moment you have all been waiting for. It is the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week. Right, first of all, thank you for everyone who's been watching tonight. It's been good to have you with us. Once again, thanks for Crumpy for doing the comments, doing a great job there. What have we got? Yes, okay. My Zoomer of the Week is how do you say this?
Kaukab.
Stewart. Let me find this thing here. Okay, I've got a caption. There. Last week, the Scottish Government released guidance that Scots could identify themselves as one or maybe more of 24 genders. Some of you maybe have heard of some of these genders, of course, like trans man and trans woman, but perhaps you haven't really thought about those too much. They're actually quite loaded terms. If you think about it, trans woman implies to some extent the person is a woman. And there's some debate about that. Of course, these terms are actually, we never actually heard these terms. You can remember this. Maybe a few years ago, you had to learn what a trans woman was. Before that was a transsexual. Never heard these before. They were imported from the United States by trans activists, many of whom, we won't go into that. Anyway, but other of these genders, these 24 genders, are just nonsense. What have we got here? Gender queer. A gender identity that is other than male or female, or a combination.
Right.
So other than male or female, what does that mean? Like you're an alien or something? I don't know. Here's the list actually here on this. other than male or female. I don't know what other male or female is here. Anyway, I don't know what that is. It's got that thing that's on the top there. Okay, so that's a big list. Oh my God, it goes a big list there. Anyway, some of course you heard like non-binary and so on. Anyway, or pangenders, who are defined as being an identity not limited to two genders, some kind of mix of genders. So presumably someone could identify as being transmasculine, which is one of the genders, and also as transfeminine. Perhaps they would cancel each other out. Or even neutral, which is one of the genders on the list. Neutral, I don't have any gender, but maybe I should say I'm neutral. But whatever. Anyway, the point being that you can make up whatever you like. And the Scottish Government seems to be going along with this. And not actually going along with it, actively promoting it. Now, SNP Equalities Minister, Kaukab, Stewart, took time off from enjoying her £120,000 a year salary to say that the 24 genders had been developed to help with data collection on the basis of most responses to the 2022 census. Now, we all know that was a bit of a disaster. Anyway, but as in no surprise, a study of the census showed that 14 of the categories of the 24 were not even on the census.
Oh, you're a liar.
Yes. These included the here we go. Sure, that's out there waving. I'd be waving too if I had all that money. But anyway, it's a different matter. So the ones that were missing included pangender, wasn't even on there. Serious omission, if you ask me. Autigender, which means that they think about their gender in the context of autism, as well as a whole load of others. And the more pernicious demigenders. Demigenders. Have you heard of the demigender, Mark? Is he? No?
Yeah.
Those are someone who's only partially or not wholly identifies as a girl or a woman or a man or a boy. So if you have a wee bit of you, I think you might have a little bit of a feminine touch there, David.
Yeah, for sure.
You can put yourself down as a demigender.
That will do me. Yep. So don't you misgender me, you guys.
Right, exactly. The question is why? Why are they doing this? Of course, because they're idiots. That's the first thing. But they're trying to police language and enforce identity. On a wider, more philosophical point, it treats identity as an achievement and an end point rather than character, which is built through experience and which is actually fluid, unlike these things. What they try to say is put people in a box and then treat them accordingly, and that's not really what it's about, just making up crap, really. And anyway, so we have a so-called equalities minister who produces a nonsense list that she can't even defend. She can't even say that this. She tried to say it was because of the census. No, it's just made it up. Yep. Whole department there making up stuff. And what a waste of money and time that all is. And so for that reason, she is my Zoomer of the week.
A worthy candidate, no doubt.
I mean, come on, really?
Yes,
but we have to be careful not to misgender you from now.
Yeah, exactly. So, just I'm demi, pan, whatever, neutral. There you go. Yeah. Right. I'm deep pan. That's what I'm. Deep pan. There you go.
Deep pan. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Right. Okay. Next up, it is going to be Derek. Need to call Derek again. David for his Zoomer.
Okay, guys and gals.
Go for us.
My Zoomer this week is a familiar name, Kemi Farquharson.
Oh,
who's often
I usually do him.
You do, and you usually call him the appeaser-in-chief.
Yes, that's right.
Independence movement at the Times newspaper. Now, he excelled himself this week. Now, he has called this week for a coalition or an alliance in the 2026 Holyrood election. So he wrote an article, and he has come up with this great idea of two parties doing that and joining together to make sure that a particular outcome happens. Now, can you guess which two parties? I'll give you a clue. One is the SNP. Guess what the other one is? The Greens? Nope. Alba? Nope.
Okay.
Kemi wants to see an SNP Labour coalition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, the two parties of which between them took over 65% of the vote in the general election 4 months ago. Nonetheless, Kenny wants them to stand together because that's apparently the two halves are not enough. What that poll I referenced earlier has the two of those parties winning 80 seats. Now, remember, you only need 65 and you've got a majority, but he wants that to happen. And the reason he wants this to happen is to stop reform. Now, reform, which is currently polling at 11%, which would give them 12 seats. So he wants the two parties who have got 51 and 29 to stand together to stop the party which is likely to win 12. So Kenny wants this for one particular reason, and that is to stop reform sweeping to power and to stop Nigel Farage dictating Scottish politics.
No, I don't think that's the reason.
No, I think you're right. Exactly. So that's the reason he's given. So just to stop a party which can only win 12 seats max in a legislature which contains 129 seats, so he wants an alliance to stop them. Well, to give you an indication of what a dreadful idea this is, Stu Campbell, who you'll know as Wings Over Scotland, not only agrees with this idea, but he claims it was actually his idea 18 months ago.
Right.
I bet it was. Anyway, but this, of course, will be at the time that Stu was imploring people to vote for his beloved Alex Salmond's Alba party. While he was doing that, he was plotting a Labour SNP coalition. Yeah, all right, guys, fine. So, I mean, seriously, do these guys think we are stupid? Seriously, as Mark Mark is alluding there to the fact that Kenny Farquharson wants to see this happen because he's a nationalist and he's yes. Independence back on the agenda. So for his
keeps wanting, yeah, go ahead. So
no, do the
closing. Okay.
Sorry, the closer is for his most idiotic suggestion yet in his lengthy series of attempts to legitimise anti-breathe life into the cadaverous Scottish independence movement. Kenny, you're my Zuma boy.
Well, yes, I think that was a good closing, I have to say.
Thank
I
you.
think it's very true. He's attempting to breathe life into beating a dead horse while giving it mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. What about that for a metaphor?
Extremely good, yeah, I like that, yeah.
Right. That's what he's doing.
Yes.
Anyway, now Twitter has a new feature, lets you see the posts of blocked folk. So, you know, he can see what we're writing about him. And we can see what he's writing, what nonsense he's writing. Actually, although we can't interact, when that's probably the best way. But it's this whole thing. It's like, here's a panic. How to stop Nigel Farage from dictating Scottish politics? Yeah, what with his 12 seats, even at the best. You know, it's like, come on, be serious. Actually, you're right. I didn't do any thinking in this article. I was just like, okay, but. But here's the thing. This is the thing. Now, is there really a possibility that they could join with each other? Now, it sounds quite appealing in some circles, you know, especially if you're a dying nationalist, as it were, or your nationalism is dying, to be more precise. But what's the incentive for Labour to do it?
Quite.
I don't know. Labour could just say to people before the election, join us and we'll win.
Yeah, quite. Yep.
That's much more likely. And, you know, you're in a dead-end party anyway. And by the way, Lorna Slater just spent £1 billion as the money.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So anyway, I think that's very good. But I'm not the one who's deciding this week. Okay, Mark Z, you're going to be up next. So see you in a second. Right.
I think I'm onto a winner.
Oh, okay.
I think I have the winner right here. Right.
Okay, we'll give it a go.
And it's quite short, so it won't take me long.
Right.
And the name is Patrick Harvie.
Right.
He is the Zoomer of the week without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay.
He's so upset about Donald Trump winning the election. He's done an article and he's absolutely demanded that the Scottish government snub Donald Trump. And not only that, not only should they snub Donald Trump, but they should cut off all ties and end the relationship with America, the Scottish government. That's what he's demanded. So this guy has got, you know, he thinks the Scottish government have so much power that they can end the relationship with America and just cut off all ties, which is quite a thing for him to say. It's just absolutely ridiculous again. You know, could you imagine Swinney in Parliament standing up and saying, we now have no relationship or any ties with with America. We don't recognise America at all. Could you imagine it? Could you imagine it? It's just, you know. And Donald Trump just comes over and says, "Fair enough, I'll just take all my employees and all my money out of Scotland and
he likes Scotland. I mean, the thing is, he likes Scotland. It's just this petty politics of the playground, totally. Really. It's to jump to. I mean, what is he? Patrick Harvie. He's a minor player in a minor administration. He was just booted out.
Yep.
He's a niche of a niche, as we like to say in our household. You know, he's so far removed from being the main thing. You know?
Yeah, you just wonder, because you think, well, what ties could they cut off?
Yeah.
You know, unless they're going to cut Donald Trump's tie off. I don't really.
Well, it's a bit long. He does wear it a bit long, I have to say.
I don't understand what ties he's going to cut off.
We can imagine, you know, Patrick Harvie running up to Donald Trump and just try to cut his tie. Just imagine that. And that shows you the stature of the man.
Yeah. So that's my Zoomer.
Oh, jeez. Okay, that's something else, but okay. Right. David, it's going to be you that decides. Right?
Okay, I think some pretty plausible candidates this week. Kaukab is, she's obviously made that stuff up to justify her own job. Kenny Farquharson has just made up that nonsense. I know somebody here saying, oh, look, Green's only got 8 seats and they've dictated much of policy. Yeah, but who's going to do a deal with reform? Who? Labour? No chance. So no, they're not going to be a factor. They might win a few seats, but that's it. So they won't be part of any coalition. So we don't need a coalition to stop them. So yeah, that's just a dumb idea, and the fact that Campbell's trying to steal it shows that. So no, I think Mark Z was confident, and normally I'd say if someone's so confident, I've got to undermine them, but nah, he's right.
Right. Oh,
it's got to be Patsy. So well done, Mark Z.
Okay, very good. Well done. I have to type it up. Listen, Mary does every week. I need to Partick, not Pat.
Partick, yeah. Partick.
Right. Okay, there we go. And oh, sure. It is. No, please support the majority of the donation. Right, no, this one. Some of the week winner, Mark Z, Patrick Harvie. There we go. Clap. Patrick Harvie. Yes, a pimple on a pimple. I think it was the thing I was looking for earlier on. Right. So anyway, we are so happy to have you on Scotland's #1 Politics Chat. We will see you at the same time, same place next Wednesday. So for Thought of the Week, I was looking for something on elections. I couldn't really. There was millions, actually. But anyway, I decided to go back all the way to Plato, who said one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, maybe one of the penalties for participating in politics, but actually participating in politics, is you still end up being governed by your inferiors. But anyway, Thought of the Week, nonetheless. So thank you all for all your support. Thank you to Mark Zegfeld. And to David Griffiths for your insight. Thank you very much. Thank you all for watching, and we thank you also to the original Grumpy Git. I'm not too sure if it's the original Grumpy Git or the something Grumpy Git. Yes, whatever it is, Grumpy Git nonetheless has done a great job with the comments, and we'll thank you. Thumbs up. All right, so we'll see you all next week. Take care, and thank you for everything.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much for the.
Cheers.